cosmic, 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 cosmic.
Hello and welcome to the universe of God. Here is where we are discovering God in the universe so that we can uncover God in the earth. And we are currently talking about the days of Noah. Welcome back. This is going to be part 5 as we discuss the days of Noah so that we can understand the past discover the past and understand our present, which is going to help us to understand our future, which is here. I'd like to welcome you back. In part 5, we're going to pick up with the discussing the days of Noah, where we are following a strain of information that's directly associated with the days of Noah, but it's playing out throughout time. And it tells us that these particular things we need to pay attention to because they are directly connected with the fallen world of Noah's time, this world that had fallen into such a state of corruption and being overrun with the interference of extraterrestrials, bringing, their power, influence, enslavement and so forth and so on, to our human world, and of course even making Nephilim by procreating with humans, DNA mixing, genetic gene splicing, making coming down here and experimenting with creation on our planet and making new things. And what happened was we see these things, they weren't good. It wasn't better. It didn't make our planet better. It didn't help us any. It actually caused destruction and catastrophe in our planet. So what we're seeing is God in the beginning, he created heaven and earth, light, inhabitants, everything. And at the end of his creation, before he rested, he said, it is good. It was good. But the thing is, we have an interference from what was called anciently the Pt.5a Elohim, associating them with a part of, a higher creation, a higher order that God had created, a supernatural entities that existed, and their interference of coming and taking what God made that was good and trying to make it better or alter it only polluted it. And so we're going to dive deeper into the days of Noah. And I originally wanted to just do a few videos about this. I thought I could condense it and generalize it. But there is really so much packed into the days of Noah that we really can understand now in our present day and how it is applicable to our present day, that I'm not sure how many videos I'm going to end up doing about Noah, but this one is going to give us another peek into the nature and the character of these fallen beings that brought such pollution, destruction, and we'll say misinterpreted language that speaks of evolution. That's a misinterpretation of the truth. We're going to talk about these entities and follow them a little bit throughout time, because there's some things in particular that we need to associate with them so that we can understand when they are at work and if their influence is actually upon our world again today, like it was in the days of Noah. So in part 4, I read First Enoch, chapter 18, verse 14 through 15, Third Maccabees, chapter 2, verse 4 through 5, and Psalms 82:1, and Jubilees, chapter 20. And these were pulled from, other ancient texts that tell us of our history. So let's see. We need to establish the fallen angels and their progeny, their offspring. That is what we're going to focus on. Establishing this group, that the nature of this group and what it is that they tend to pollute the earth with, these ideas and ideals that actually cause destruction in the end, even though they may not seem destructive in the beginning, at least to some. But in common ancient Jewish idioms in the Old Testament and the Pt.5a, the wandering stars are considered divine celestial beings. This isn't isolated to just the ancient Jews and scriptural texts. However, the ancient pre-flood world considered the stars the host of heaven and equated them with deities. So we see the Old Testament agrees with the correlation of stars of heaven also being the heavenly host and likened to pagan deities. Check out Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 19, as well as the angelic sons of God around the throne, as it's mentioned in Psalm 89, verse 5 through 7, and Job 38, verse 7. There's been some controversy with the sons of God in the theological community, but we're just going to move past those arguments, and we're going to, here in the universe of God, we understand that the sons of God are, fallen angels. Okay. They are, they're angels, they're extraterrestrials, right? Angelic hosts, otherworldly beings. They're the sons of God. There's different names to them. We're the human race, right? A lot of people have come through this planet in thousands of years. We're at over 7 billion now. And side note, in the days of Noah, they were at a capacity of over 7 billion people, and we're there today as well. So something interesting to know. But the sons of God, there's no confusion here in the universe of God with this. They are the Pt.5a Elohim. They are the extraterrestrials, okay? That they talk about in all these, these shows. So in Jude, in the Bible, in Jude, these wandering stars are considered as ungodly villains, bent on sensual immorality and even denying the Lord, just as First Enoch chapter 67 verse 10 mentions that they are angels who debauch their bodies and deny the Lord. These traits follow the angels who are said to abandon their proper abode because they kept not their own domain. So basically, here again, when we say fallen angels, this concept of fallen is, yes, they are not the angelic host that are messengers of God today, serving God to his glory, rolling with the king of the universe. They're on his team. That's whose team I'm playing for. And that's whose team that hopefully you are playing for, or, want to play for, because that's the winning team. And these fallen angels, they fell. They left their original estate. They left their original heavenly domain and got intermingled in the things of the earth. Okay. And there's texts that will, discuss in detail things like they got stuck here in physical bodies, because the laws of nature, of heaven and earth, they couldn't come in and just be in a body, like they wanted to. They would get stuck here. So I don't know how much truth there is to that. But there's stories of how this played out, but they're the fallen angels. Okay. They left their original estate. They left the place God created them to be and interfered in things that they were forbidden to interfere in. So they did some illegal things. Okay. In Jude, in First Enoch chapter 15 verse 3, these angels are the ones who left their original estate and defiled themselves with women. So here we have this fallen angel group and their progeny. But the fallen angel group are, first we know that they left their original state. They left heaven where they ruled, in the places where they ruled. They left their place of domain. And they came and defiled themselves with women. So those are two things that we understand about them. They also created giant children, products of hybridization, who were not to be created, as is said in 1 Enoch 15, because they were created in rebellion to God and were an evil progeny. We know they were an evil progeny of this DNA genetic mixing of separate species because history is riddled with stories of their gruesome past. Despite what you may hear on TV and embellishments, and mythological stories, and, we have to understand there is a gruesome past associated with these entities. And we will eventually start differentiating here because, again, we talked about the real versus the counterfeit. There are people who think God of the Old Testament was, evil and dictator, all these negative things because they misunderstand what's happening here. They misunderstand the bigger picture. We're talking about God. So there's a bigger picture. And we don't understand what we are reading and observing when we look back. But we will understand that there's a difference between these little g gods, these fallen angels, and the one true God, the creator of all. There's a difference. And so there may be some similarities to how things were done because, hey, they came from God. There's some things they understood and they knew. And so it wouldn't be surprising for them to counterfeit him because there's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing they can do that hasn't already been done or created for them to even be able to do it because it originally came from God, right? I can take iron. Iron came from God, right? It's an element. He created everything, and I can turn it into a weapon. So it's what you did with the information. That's going to differentiate these different rulers, I would say. The God, the one true God, the goodness of God, and these entities that are not for our good, they're for our evil. They don't love us like our creator, okay? They don't want what's best for us. They want us to do what's best for them. They want to manipulate our weaknesses, to do their evil bidding, right? Because now it says, the first book of Enoch says they're in rebellion to God. So now what they're doing is in direct rebellion to him by breaking the law, coming to earth, interfering, mixing with women, creating these hybridization species and so forth and so on. But ruling over the people, how they're ruling over the people, making the people worship them and so forth. Everything that they're doing is in rebellion to God. And part of that is because there was a judgment passed. And now they're truly in rebellion even more because there's no turning back for them because the Bible says they're not like us. They were created eternal, supernatural beings. They knew God before we even knew God, right? Or they knew him differently. And so my point is, the judgment was different for them. It played out a little differently because they were not like us. They were held accountable to a higher standard, understandably so, right? Especially when we know that these Elohim were there at the beginning, the morning stars who sang at our creation, at what God had done. They were there worshiping God for what he had done. They were there in the beginning, so they knew better. They were judged differently, and now they're in rebellion to God for very different reasons than you and I, right? Some of us are in rebellion, we don't know. Some of us are in rebellion because we've been hurt, and we don't want to believe in God. Whatever the reason is, they're in rebellion because they can never regain their original estate. Matter of fact, they have been falling for eons of time. And the more they fall, the worse they become. They're in a fallen state. So we're going to pick back up with 5b of this series in the days of Noah. And I'll see you in 5b.